Hi, I'm Feroz Khan, and welcome to Drag and Drop Low Code Unplugged, the podcast where we explore the game-changing impact of low code in software development. Join me in insightful conversations with IT leaders and passionate low code enthusiasts who are at the forefront of this digital evolution. Together, we'll explore how early adoption of low code is giving businesses a competitive edge on a global scale. We'll discuss its impact on software development, dissect its role in transforming businesses, and uncover the ways in which it's reshaping career trajectories. So whether you're a seasoned IT professional or a curious enthusiast, be sure to tune in as we share success stories and unravel the mysteries of low code. Subscribe now and stay tuned for a front row seat to the revolution that's shaping the future of technology. So let's go. Hey Jeroen, how are you?
Hi. Yeah, doing fine. Doing fine. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thank you for, agreeing to be on. I know I think I reached out to you last year to say you're on this year's list of people to contact. So,
That's true.
I appreciate you saying yes and, being here and, agreeing to come and share a bit about your story and your kind of insights.
Yeah, it's really nice being here. I listen to the podcast myself as well, and honestly, I also enjoy like both the out systems and the Mendix look on things.
Yeah,
See similarities, changes, differences, and such. So that's a good thing.
And it's always nice to interview people who actually listen to the episode. So thank you. I appreciate that. And obviously, yeah, you're a Mendix MVP. Most people in the Mendix community, I would say, know you, especially in the kind of Netherlands region, because you're active member. But it'd be good to start with a bit of, for those who don't know you, a bit about yourself, your background, where you're from.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm Jeroen, as you mentioned. I'm now just turned 30, actually. This is my first job, my first real job still. Always been in Mendix, so to say. So I'm doing that, I think, now for 8 or 9 years. Always been with CLEVR. Previously it was called Mass Systems. But after a merger, it became the CLEVR we are now.
Uh-huh.
Living in Boskoop, that's near to Gouda. And that's where we know...
I've heard that one a lot. Yep.
Yeah, that's where Jan's coming from.
Yep.
Yeah, let's see. I was born on an island, actually, still.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a big island with all bridges and such, but
Cool.
in the more southern part of Holland, on Goede Overflakke for the Dutchies.
Okay.
Moved to Rotterdam later, so I'm just moving to the center of the country, you would say.
Yeah, sure.
Doing a lot of scouting still in Zeeland, actually, in the Netherlands. Nice. So going there, not every Saturday, but a lot of them. Into photography. I brewed my own beer. Now it's
I saw on your LinkedIn that your I was going to ask you about your beer brewing and where that kind of passion came from. Definitely.
Yeah. I must confess that it's been 2 years now since I brewed my last beer, but that's mainly due to our lovely daughter. So
of course,
you need to pick your hobbies, so to say.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think kids definitely take priority, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Still into running and skiing, and so more of the sporty things I enjoy.
Yeah.
So I prioritize those above brewing beer, but it's not gone forever.
At least, hopefully, you still get the chance to enjoy a beer now and then.
That's true.
Amazing. And obviously, you touched on, all you've known is Mendix. You've worked with Mendix in your professional career. Yeah. Rewinding back kind of before your professional career, when did you kind of feel or not, that technology was the direction you wanted to go with in your career?
Yeah, well, I studied business IT and management, so it's called, and I picked that study with a clear purpose, as it brought IT and business already together, or mainly business and people. So it was more of the soft side of IT. and I really enjoyed that all day long. And then I think in my second year or third year, we were introduced with Mendix basically during
Nice.
already then. And it was because of the course. It was BPNN, I think it was called. And then the tutor, he said, well, yeah, we can draw some pretty pictures and we can draw some pretty schemes, but we can also actually build an application with a similar language than as we would use normally in this course. So then he introduced Mendix to us. So we had to build our first app actually there.
Wow, that's really it's great to hear, because obviously most people I speak to, they go through doing traditional development in their studies, right? And then they finish and then they might get introduced to low code, or they go away and work in a traditional capacity and then eventually through referral or something like that. I guess it helps that you're in the Netherlands, and Mendix being a Dutch company is obviously pushing with universities and training programs, so that kind of was an advantage that it was introduced to you quite early into your studies rather than later on, which gives you obviously a better idea to kind of evaluate where you want to go, right? Yeah. Kind of not just being told high code is the way, this is how you build software, and then later on finding out actually I can do it much easier.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I think I was especially lucky because my study was also located in Rotterdam, so that was really close to the
office.
And,
Yeah. And when you were kind of obviously you did Mendix within your studies, but that doesn't mean you then have to go away and pick Mendix as a career, right? You could have went and followed other skill sets. What drove you to decide, okay, this is the direction I want to go in?
Well, yeah, it's just reviewing and looking back almost 10 years. I do remember that at first I thought consultancy in general, that's something you do when you have like a lot of experience, and you do that as your third or fourth job maybe, that you first are in a position somewhere internally or you're doing something else, and then eventually you are in the position that you can actually advise customers or different companies in doing stuff, for example software development. But then this job was given to me or suggested to me by an external agency back in the day. And they didn't tell the name of the company. They didn't tell much about where they were located. Just the formal, like what's expected from you.
What the role and responsibilities.
Exactly. And then I thought, well, this is really nice. As in, you will visit like a lot of organizations, like companies, and you will be able to both deliver something, ask the right questions, make sure that you know what needs to happen, all in all. So you will be into software development there, but like really close to the business. And I thought, is this like a junior function or a position or what is it about? It is. Just give them a visit. And that's where it basically started. So then I understood, well, it's including Mendix, and then it made sense to me, well, that is something you can actually learn and start doing quite early in your career. And I already worked, I think, 3 or 4 years for Student at Home, it was called back then. And it mainly meant that you visited people, so consumers, and helped them with their iPhones and printers, internet, and things like that. So like the soft skills things you need to just support people and asking questions. I think I had some time to prepare there. And eventually it turned out to be a great mix. And
And you said earlier on just now, you felt consulting is something that should come later, right? When you've got all the experience. Now that you actually did that, has your mindset changed, where you think it doesn't matter what level you're in, you can join a consultancy and grow?
Partially, yeah.
Okay.
Let's say partially. and that also saved me basically back
Yeah.
in the day. That having good colleagues, having a good
Yeah.
mentor, some luck that you can start at the right projects, because they differ like
Yeah.
immensely if you're working for governmental
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
customers or more consumer-faced companies or whatever. It can really determine your path forward basically, and the knowledge you will gain over time. And
Yeah.
that mix with a good mentor, that mix with good colleagues, that mix with proper
Yeah.
resources and training, and if everything is right, then, or mostly is right, then
Yeah.
I certainly think that you can start real early with being a consultant. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what was great that you touched on that, I think a lot of people still don't appreciate as much is the soft skills side. And I think especially when it comes to people working in low code, because you're so close to the business, I think the old stereotypical software developer who's doesn't have much of a personality, sitting in the corner just writing code, kind of doesn't come across. Low code, someone working in low code, I think definitely needs to have the soft skills as well if they want to grow. And I think they'll definitely get a job still, but I think in regards to growth and stepping up in their career, I think the soft skills is probably as important as the technical skills. Would you agree?
I would certainly agree, and I think it's closely tied to the expectations of low code, what you see, and I think that's also one of the biggest benefits that's not always that clearly highlighted.
Yeah.
But that's the small teams, as in chances are higher that you have more needed skills within a smaller team, and having a smaller team requires fewer processes and fewer communication lines, and having fewer communication gives you speed again.
Yeah.
So I think because there are also teams, like quite big teams actually, with more of the tech only low code developers, I would say so. They also like to have those performance challenges, and that's what they live for.
Yeah.
And they want to have the abstract challenges and not so the business challenges.
Yeah.
And then you still have a business analysis in between, and that's perfectly fine too. But then you do have those communication lines. You do have procedures to have Figma screens and whatever you need to build that application. So then still you have a platform that gives you speed. But I think the main promise of low code is to have those like small agile teams with 2 or 3 individuals that are able to both build something, design something, ask the right questions, etc. I think if you have that, then you have the highest gains.
Yeah. And I don't know how much you would come across this, because obviously, Netherlands is just Mendix aside, it's low code adoption is big, right? In my eyes, the 2 leading platforms are very prominent in the Netherlands. When you compare it to other countries, one dominates over the other in certain cases where, both are kind of well known. Low code is well known. Both communities have a lot of developers and people around. So, do you still find there's a lot of misconceptions around Mendix and low code when you're speaking to business people about, what it can do and cannot do?
Potentially, but I do feel that it's fading away. And then it surely helps that a company like Siemens acquired Mendix years and years ago. And you see nowadays, then it's easier to discuss like with customers or potential customers, like, oh, it's backed by Siemens. Well, then we trust it, because then it makes sense for some reason. But you do see that. I think that could be an explanation for the large footprint in the Netherlands.
Yeah,
is that within the Netherlands you mainly see that we like the fact that you have small teams and that you can be pragmatic about things. And the more you move to other countries, you see that within IT and software development, they have maybe different kind of expectations, like without the technology. I think just on the process side. So, but we do respect like a functional design. We do expect like a technology design. We do expect this and this and this. And now we see more and more that can be combined with low code.
Yeah.
All fine.
Yeah.
And with well-informed enterprise architects. Yeah.
And you touched on another, and I think that's a great kind of example, the Siemens thing, right? Like I think the Siemens kind of backing versus, use cases when you have large companies, well-known brands who a Mendix can share a use case saying, hey, they've adopted Mendix helps, but also Siemens being such a global brand, it obviously adds that stamp of, okay, why have they invested in this business? We should surely be listening to what they have to offer. So I think it definitely adds a lot of value.
Yeah, especially if you add the governance promises to it and all the investments. I think over the last 2 years, so many governance related features were introduced to the platform. And especially when the platform is being backed by Siemens and they offer this level of governance and they are in OT businesses and close to things that matter, as in bridges, ships, big things, then it's easier to trust a platform like those. I can imagine.
Yeah. And, the last few years, everyone's talking about AI. AI is kind of, everyone's marketing campaign is around AI. All the platforms are pushing AI forward. I'm keen to know kind of what's your take on, obviously there's so many different opinions out there on, AI is here, is low code going to be needed? AI is enough with traditional development. What's your kind of opinion on the future of low code and how that will kind of go?
Yeah, honestly, I'm surfing the hype cycle. That's,
okay, cool.
and I've been all over the place. As I remember, 5 years ago, I was working for a media company, and they were quite early in adopting AI in their processes. So they were looking for speech to text. I can remember that Google back in the day, they offered the best speech to text models, and it was still not 100% perfect, but it was like really interesting what we could do with that. And then we were already like switching from AWS to Azure, back to AWS to Google, just by the week eventually to have the best speech to text service available. And but that was already 5 years ago, I think.
Yeah, wow.
And now I see that happening again as people jumping from AI agent to AI agent and from LLM to LLM and back and forth. And it's a bit of a happening again. But this feels kind of huge, honestly. So I still think that I don't think it will replace low code. Certainly not. But it will make a huge difference whether you either use LLMs, AI, or you don't in collaboration with low code. So if we still refer to those teams, like smaller teams, you now have access to more knowledge and more capabilities with an even smaller team, basically, which again strips out communication, making you more agile. So I think there I see now in the short midterm, the biggest impact.
Yeah. Do you think developers should be worried at all?
Partially.
Okay.
I feel so too. I do feel that developers, especially because there's still like a huge shortage of developers and software developers.
Yes.
So on the short term, I think it will, we will be fine. But it will be way more important to oversee all moving parts, so to say. So it's likely that more junior functions potentially, or if you say, well, I want to focus on delivering features and a bit less on delivering apps, so to say. If you're more in that ball game, then it might be challenging to to stay relevant if AI is starting to automate those
Yeah.
kind of tasks. I can imagine that can be a concern.
Yeah, yeah. And Mendix is obviously, heavily invested in AI and, rolling out features. And, there's Maya, as well, have you kind of, how is that kind of, has that helped anyway in your kind of day-to-day responsibilities?
Well, partially, again.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
I do feel, and you were referring to that earlier already, as
Yeah.
in it's on everyone's roadmap now,
Yeah,
and everyone
yeah.
needs to do something. And some of the features, I personally would say, well, those are in that
Yeah,
area, so
yeah,
we
yeah.
need to do something. And this is what everyone is asking for, or stakeholders are asking for, so we bring it. But if you're a more senior low-code consultant, then it's likely that you say, well, I will build this myself. And
Yeah.
things that were already part of Maya, which are not on the Gen AI side, basically, but things like generate this validation microflow.
Yeah.
That's super helpful because that was
Yeah.
recurring work, and you know
Yeah.
what you want to have validated, and you can really check it fairly easily by just looking at what was generated. So there it's really speeding up your work.
Yeah.
But that was not Gen AI. But now
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
of course, rebranded to Maya, which makes
Yeah.
total sense because it's
Yeah.
an assistant.
Yeah.
But therefore, I do see that generating like whole domain models, that could help, and it will help, and it helps me as well with smaller apps or proof of concepts,
Yeah.
and it's really fast. But eventually, I see most of your domain model, for example, or your data layer you will create early in the project, and a lot of thinking goes into that, and then you will build on top of it. So eventually the gains are not too high,
Yeah.
and they are mainly in automating your repetitive tasks.
Yeah.
If you would
Yeah.
ask me.
Yeah, I agree. And what I said earlier was, I think it's one of those things where it's like a race, right? You need to ensure you've got something so you can be in the conversation, right? So it might not be the finished product or add as much value as it's being kind of pushed out and kind of marketed at. But I think with everything moving so quick, and obviously you're also competing with other platforms, everyone needs to kind of make sure they're evolving and bringing something out as quick as possible, and then working on it in the background, right, to make it better, or they will just get, I think, left behind, in my opinion.
That's true, and there will be value in there, but I think we know as all of us together in just a few years what's the real value. But I do think another one that was introduced quite recently is adding generative AI in the story creation.
Yeah.
So making from just a few words like an okay user story, asking the right questions, and I see that's again a fun place.
Yeah.
To have generative AI, because that again brings business closer to IT closer to business, and saving you some time in having these discussions, as in, this is not smart, this is not according to your template, this is not no. So it does save you quite some time there.
Yeah, yeah. And AI aside, obviously you've been working with low code for a long time. In that time that you've worked with Mendix, and there's always feature, releases, right, of certain features. What would you say in the time that you've been working with Mendix are, it can be more than one, kind of really valuable releases that were impactful for, you felt, one, for your kind of job, but two, you feel, oh, this is going to add value to my customer?
It's like a lot.
All right, I'll say give me a top one or two then.
Well, yeah, a lot of those things are quite hidden. I remember that from version 6 to version 7. Now we're now close to version 11.
Yeah.
They decided to move to a stateless architecture. Like, that's quite dull if you would say, well, just call a fancy feature.
Yeah.
But I know for sure if they would have said, well, we don't do that now, we will do that later, then we would have been in so many problems. So by having those early good foundational decisions, that brings us the platform that we have today. And there's quite some of those things in there, choosing React, for example, as their foundational technology platform for native, and things like that. So a bit more on the backbone side. But I was very happy with the task queue back in the day when that became platform supported. A lot of community supported modules were available for that. So as soon as all those fancy things that everyone uses become platform supported, that does give you a lot of opportunities to use it more regularly at all customers. So I was happy with that. And again, all governance related features. I'm currently involved in customers that really ask for that. So they want to have this overview over multiple apps. So then it's really helpful to know what kind of components are used in your applications, and not need to build something for that yourself, because previously that was what you had to do. And now you can use pipelines from Mendix, you can use the software bill of material from Mendix, you can use their company marketplace to ship components to other apps, and all those things are in there, I think, for the last years. But if you now strip them down, then you will need a lot more people to have some kind of a platform approach somewhere.
And obviously we've been talking prior to this, and you're a fan of the partnerships that Mendix has, and when you look at cloud platforms like Snowflake and AWS, and obviously I saw you released an article not too long ago talking about that. Can you kind of elaborate on why you think these partnerships are key for Mendix?
I think it all starts with knowing what you have with something like Mendix. And if you just peel off Mendix, then you still have a Java app, a container running somewhere. If you pay a bit more, then you will have more instances. You will still have a database that's still Postgres. It's just Postgres. And those kind of technologies, they will have their limitations, basically. And on the other side, all features that are asked from you, you can build them faster, but you still need to build them. Meaning that bringing in something like Snowflake, which is not Postgres, but is something else, which scales by the penny, so to say, you can do different things, I would say. And I've seen over the last few years, and especially if we talk, for example, about Snowflake, that customers are asking for reporting and dashboards. Almost every customer asks for things like that. And then most low-code developers say, we can build that. We have the charge widget, and we have data. So why not? We can just start working on that. And then eventually that app becomes slow-ish. Or you do see that whenever a user opens up that report, then the overall processes, so the business processes, they become slower because they are in the same app. And from an architectural perspective, you would say, well, I can imagine, because it's all in the same Java container still. Of course, you're using low-code, but it's still some technology constraints, I would say. And by bringing in those partnerships, so to say, so Snowflake, for example, you can offload all those questions to something else, and then you can use the power where it's supposed to be. And having that in mind, I think it's really helpful to have those connectors in place.
And obviously, Snowflake's a big release, and AWS is another one, and what do you think are the benefits of that, and and also what do you think, what are the most kind of critical things that should be considered in a setup?
Well, you were referring to generative AI, and even companies themselves, so not even the low-code companies, but just companies, they want to experiment with that and see if it brings value. And by having this partnership with AWS, for example, like really early, I think years ago, 2 years ago already, Mendix was one of the first with AWS Bedrock connector, because they already had that partnership. They already had the foundational connectors to have authentication and all the boring stuff. That was already sorted out. So it was fairly easy for them to add a Bedrock connector. And nowadays we have like all modules, starter apps, templates to just start your own agent or your own Gen AI chat app or your something with agentic workflows. And you can start experimenting with that fairly easy because of those partnerships and because of those platform supported modules. I think that's in the time we live in today, that's a really clear example. If you want to stay on top of things, then it's challenging if you don't have a platform in place to help you with something like that. So
yeah. And how do you approach scalability and security when deploying Mendix apps on AWS?
For me, it starts by reading documentation. As in, luckily Mendix they provided quite some blogs on how to handle security and what you can choose there. If I'm in a bit bigger team which is new to AWS, I try to scope access as much as possible just to make sure that we stay in the safe area. Things we know from Mendix, which is out of the box available. So having environments, having your test, acceptance, production. You could have just a production resource in AWS if you want to. Same for Snowflake, you're on your own there. So if that's new to the team, it's important to not get rid of all your good practices and say, well, now we're in a different zone, so now we can do whatever we like. So keep that all in place. Then I think that's a good foundation to start with.
Yeah. And you said to me, for you, kind of quality is key, right? Important, right? You're all about quality. How do you, and advice you would give, how do you maintain that in a low-code project?
There are various ways, especially in smaller teams. I think having peer reviews in place is one of the foundational things to both learn from each other, know what's going on, and have early flagging of things that might go wrong in the long run. Myself, I learned a lot from having those peer reviews, having a good mentor on the same project that brought me basically where I am today. So everyone who is not having peer reviews, and I think, I feel quite sad for you. Because, where do you get your knowledge from? And having tools available. So there's a lot in the more of the sanity, static code analysis kind of space. We had our ACR tooling. You have things from QSM. You have other vendors. Currently, there's also an open source alternative, which is really nice. It's growing as well. You see customers like ABN AMRO contributing to those open source projects as well. There are more ways currently to validate if you're doing a good job. And we do not need to forget about design, if you would ask. So So having an architectural vision at the start, or knowing what's expected in your application. Are you building this application for 2 users, 3 users, 10 users, or 200 users, 2,000 users, 200,000 users? That does make sense to consider what are you actually building. And if you know that, and you know the constraints, and you know your environment, then you should be able to come up with a good design, which is also important for low-code.
Yeah. And it's good that you touched on, obviously, the peer review side, because I don't think that's kind of promoted enough or kind of spoke about enough, right? And I think that is a real big way to, just for personal growth, in my opinion, right? I think it's always good to pick one, pick multiple, whatever, right? Mentors or people you can kind of, feel the energy of, but, go to for questions. And, it's all about, I always think that seniors can also learn from juniors. There's different perspectives, right? So I think it's not only one way that, okay, I'm the senior, I've got X amount years of experience, I'm going to tell you what to do. I think people coming in from a different generation can also, it's like kids, right? Kids are a different generation to, I call myself an oldie, right? So there's so many different things. You have the images that you'll see of the kids showing the dad how to use a phone and things like that, right? So I think it's the same in the career side, where I think definitely there's added value both ways, not just one.
Totally agree. And you also see that with new features being added.
Yeah.
So workflow, even when I, because I'm currently having my expert certification.
Okay. Yeah.
And like there's nothing more than
Yeah.
formally.
Yeah.
But I never had my intermediate because that
Okay.
didn't exist then.
Okay. So you've just jumped steps.
Yeah. I only have 3. So
Yeah. Yeah.
my colleagues now have 4, which is a
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, they learned like Mendix workflow, for example, which was introduced a few years ago. They learned that via those, maybe their advanced course or something else.
Yeah.
I had to dig that up myself via the Mendix Academy, of course, because the courses are still available.
Yeah.
But you need to do it. And another way, of course, are those peer reviews, because then you will run into that newer colleague, which is more new to Mendix, and I learned it this way.
Yeah.
Then you say, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good. I didn't realize the certification was some people can have 3, some will have 4, right? It all depends on the timing of things.
Yeah.
And talking about observability, it's often overlooked, right? Why do you think that is?
Because it's easy to overlook, I would say.
Okay.
So the platform brings you so much ease in developing and deploying your application that, we all know the promises, we all see what's happening. It is very doable to have a secure, stable application on production. But what I'm always puzzled about is that when developing, you are like fixated on your console log, seeing what's happening, and I built something, I broke something, what's going on, go into your log, act on it, refactor, and do your stuff. But as soon as it runs on production, then most teams, they only go in the logs when someone calls, hey, I got an error. Can you see what went wrong? What time was it? And then they go in, they download this text file. It's surprising to me, honestly. As in, there are quite some ways to, especially nowadays, I think there are 4 major platforms where you can stream your logs and metrics to. And then you can basically set alerts on certain log nodes, trend analysis, even do some reversed alerting. So I do expect that this event runs every hour, for example, alert me when something is not there. So you can do that too. And it's quite cost effective too. And I can imagine that it's not part of the platform itself, because there are vendors that do an incredible job in offering those solutions, like AppDynamics, Datadog, and some others. So I can imagine, but still you need to do it. So we always advise to set it up early. It's not too expensive either. It brings you a lot of value. So just pick your favorite and
go for it. And low-code apps, they're getting more and more complex, right? And we're seeing a lot of high-code kind of practices emerge. How are you kind of managing the shift, and how do you think it can avoid maybe a bit of team friction? What's your kind of view and advice on that?
I like the question, because it can be challenging, honestly. Still, I do hear people say, but we are using low code, so I shouldn't take care of that.
Yeah.
And then mostly my answer is still, but it's still just the database. So it's of course you are using low code for development, but you still have challenges you need to take care of in some way. But the platform should take care of that. And with the platform that takes care of a lot of things, then you can do the math. That's but I do see honestly like a trend in people who just want to do the right thing. They are eager to do it the right way, but they are really looking for supportive tools for them to do that. So again, Maya, the performance suggestions, for example, that are part of the platform, those contribute to those practices as well. So bringing high code best practices, like where do you put an index, for example, to have some additional thinking to that. I think that helps a lot. But doing advanced branching strategies, doing hopefully that's something that's coming to the platform, having pull requests, which are very known to high code.
Yeah.
I think that will greatly improve processes like peer reviews, because then you can say, well, this developer is the owner of that branch, so I will need to submit my work at a moment where I think it's good. Now that could be more fluent, to put it like that. So personally, I'm quite happy that the learnings from the past are coming to low-code more and more as well.
Sorry, go on.
No, we need to keep it to the low-code. So it shouldn't be the developer-only productivity tool. It's still bringing business and IT closer together, and there's a lot more philosophy to the platform as a whole.
Yeah. And you touched on perfectly what my next question was going to be around. Obviously, no platform's perfect, and there's always things, obviously you're an MVP, so your opinions would be taken as well. Is there, and you mentioned one already, is there any kind of features you'd like the platform to have which currently isn't available? And you've just mentioned one.
Yeah, that's true. So having those pull requests, that's very helpful. You see a lot of things already are in the platform now. So having pipelines, it's also a bit of a high code-ish thing, like a concept to automate more of your work. But the more we can automate and having structures and standards around it, that's helpful. So everything in that direction, I would be happy with that.
Yeah.
Honestly, for a long time, I'm not missing huge things.
Okay, good.
It's also the caveat of getting things done because of extensibility. As you know, well, I can extend the platform myself now.
Yeah,
so.
Of course.
What's stopping you? So if you want to have your Azure DevOps stories embedded in Studio Pro or IDE, then you're fine. Just build it. And
then, of course.
Previously, you had to wait or just wish, and then now you can start building those things yourself.
Yeah. And one thing I'm asking everyone this year is obviously about, a lot of people have things they do on their own. You may have already done this or not, but if you could or have built any app for yourself using Mendix, what would that be and why?
Yeah, then we need to reflect back on the hobby statement.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Well, I once built an app to monitor the fermentation inside the beer can.
Nice.
So there was this kind of device floating around in there, and it was sending some messages.
Yeah.
And then I needed something to display them all and having push notifications when the fermentation was done. So I did that with Mendix, which was nice.
Yeah.
I do a lot with scouting. So having applications that support those processes or games with larger groups, that's just fun to build on. So more in that area, I would say.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, that's interesting. And finally, I think you touched on. I think especially in Netherlands, it's very rare that people don't know low code, right? I think it's if people in technology and businesses, but there still are skeptics all over the world. What would be your message to people who are still skeptical of low code?
In short, you can just trust platforms like Mendix OutSystems. That's just fairly easy. Because there's a lot of fuzz going around on the term of low code, as in even when I see the Gartner and the Forrester charts, then there are tools in there that I think, I know that we decided as a as a community that this is low code, but still I know that's just a lot of C# with a pretty configuration wrapper on top of it. And that's something different than the philosophy of the bigger platforms, I would say. So if you are into having performing scalable solutions in a faster way with a lower total cost of ownership, then it's still worth considering platforms like Mendix or OutSystems. But you can look at the examples. I think there are so many use cases, and if you see, if you have a company or a competitor that it's into some kind of the same procedures or the same skill, and you see that they are using Mendix effectively, maybe in an area that you wouldn't expect yourself, and that should give the amount of trust. And this could bring me something as well.
Yeah, and it's funny you touched on, because I feel like every conversation I've had in the last few months is about the quadrant, right? And kind of obviously Mendix and and OutSystems are there with all these other platforms, and I think a lot of skeptics today still, and it's one of the misconceptions. I think everybody assumes they all do the same thing, right? When I think a lot of people I'm speaking to think maybe they shouldn't be together, and I don't know where it should move to, but there's definitely that conversation going around that they're not all the same on that thing, even though they're put in the same kind of image. They're actually different. They offer different things, right? So is it a true reflective of the market? Would you agree with that?
Ish. As in, it's a challenging discussion, especially if you're not into low code yet. Because, for example, if you take Mendix and you would strip down everything but your language, basically what we consider to be low code, as in if you look at a microflow or a domain model, then we say, oh, that's low code. It's no code, and it is doing some logic. But if you strip down everything else, then you don't have anything, and it wouldn't be even on that quadrant. So there's a lot more to it. It's also having that platform around it, having a way to come from feedback to work, like user stories, to features, to feedback loops, to performance insights, to governance, to hosting, deployments, private clouds. There's so much more in those low-code platforms. And if you then look back to that Gartner quadrant, then all the niche players, they have a portion of low-code, if you ask me. And that's also the purpose of that quadrant. But then if you don't know that as an outsider, then it's hard to interpret the term low-code, because what's your expectation? Then we can pick a tool, and then it can bring you value. It's
definitely. Well, no, I appreciate you speaking to me. It was great to talk to you, and we spoke about a lot of interesting topics, which I think will be beneficial to anybody in low code or already kind of all considering low code. So I appreciate you agreeing to come on and speak to me, and sharing everything you've kind of learned and your advice.
Oh, it was really nice being here. The only thing that was missing was like a pint of beer or something.
Maybe next time we could do. I've told people my end goal in life is to travel the world with just a mic in my bag and interview people in person. So if I ever get to that point, we will do that. Sounds good. Thanks, Jeroen.
Yeah, thanks too.
Take care.
Yeah, bye-bye.